Most men believe that the way to keep a woman interested is to prove how much they need her. They give more attention, more reassurance, more effort. But strangely, the more they try to show how important she is, the more respect they seem to lose. Why? Because there was one realization that quietly changes the entire dynamic between a man and a woman. And it begins with a sentence that very few men are willing to say. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with calm certainty. I don't need you. At first, those words may sound cold, even cruel, but in reality, they reveal something much deeper. They reveal a man who can stand on his own, a man whose happiness, purpose, and identity do not depend on someone else's approval. And that kind of independence does something unexpected. It doesn't push women away. In many cases, it makes them respect you even more. The Stoic philosophers understood this idea long before modern psychology. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And a man who depends on someone else for validation is not free. But a man who can love without needing, who can stay without clinging, and who can walk away without fear, that is the man who cannot be easily controlled. And strangely enough, that is often the man women think about the most. So in this video, we're going to explore a simple but powerful idea: why the words "I don't need you" carry so much psychological power, and why the man who truly understands this principle often becomes the one a woman fears losing the most. Let's begin by understanding something many men never realize. Women don't fear losing the man who chases them. They fear losing the man who doesn't need to. Part 1. The illusion of power. To understand why those words carry so much power, you first need to understand an illusion that quietly exists in many relationships. From a young age, many women grow up realizing something about the world. Attention follows them. Compliments come easily. People open doors. Messages appear on their phones without effort. And slowly, often without even noticing it, a belief begins to form that their beauty, their charm, their presence gives them influence over the men around them. In many situations, that influence is real, because most men respond to it immediately. They chase attention, they try to impress, they compete for approval. And the moment a man begins chasing validation, something subtle happens. The balance of power shifts. Without saying it out loud, he communicates a message: I need your approval. But the moment a man needs approval, he becomes predictable. His mood depends on her reactions. If she pulls away, he chases. If she tests him, he tries to prove himself. If she becomes distant, he becomes anxious. And when that happens, respect slowly begins to fade. Not because she is cruel, but because human nature instinctively values what is rare and independent. This is why the Stoic philosophers placed so much emphasis on self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." In other words, your emotional state should never be controlled by someone else's behavior. A Stoic man understands this deeply. He may appreciate a woman, he may desire her company, he may even love her, but his identity does not depend on her presence. His purpose continues. His life continues. His discipline continues, whether she stays or leaves. And this is where the illusion begins to crack. Because when a woman senses that a man is not dependent on her attention, something inside her perception begins to change. For the first time, she cannot control the dynamic. She cannot predict his reactions. She cannot pull him closer simply by withdrawing. And that is when something unusual happens. The power she thought she had over him begins to disappear. Not through anger, not through dominance, but through quiet independence. And this is where the illusion begins to crack. Because when a woman senses that a man is not dependent on her attention, something inside her perception begins to change. For the first time, she cannot control the dynamic. She cannot predict his reactions. She cannot pull him closer simply by withdrawing. And that is when something unusual happens. The power she thought she had over him begins to disappear. Not through anger, not through dominance, but through quiet independence. And this is where the meaning behind those simple words becomes clear. I don't need you. Not as an insult, but as a quiet statement of independence. A man who lives this way may still choose her, but she understands something important. His life does not depend on her presence. Because strangely enough, women are rarely afraid of the man who needs them. They are afraid of the man who doesn't. And to understand why, we need to look at something even more powerful than independence: the psychological impact of indifference. Part 2. Why indifference is more powerful than anger. Most men believe that strength in a relationship means reacting strongly when something goes wrong. If a woman challenges them, they argue. If she becomes distant, they demand explanations. If she provokes them, they try to defend themselves. But this reaction reveals something important. It shows that her behavior still controls their emotions. And the moment someone can control your emotions, they hold power over you. This is why anger rarely creates respect. Anger may feel strong in the moment, but psychologically it often reveals the opposite. It shows that you are emotionally invested in winning the conflict, that you need the other person to understand you, validate you, or change their behavior. But indifference sends a completely different signal. Indifference says something without speaking. It says, your actions do not control my state of mind. When a man reacts with anger, the dynamic is still emotional. But when he responds with calm detachment, the dynamic changes completely. Because now she cannot predict him. Imagine a simple situation. A woman becomes cold or distant. Most men immediately react. They send more messages. They ask what is wrong. They try to fix the situation. But the Stoic man does something different. He notices the distance, and then he continues living his life. He doesn't panic, he doesn't chase, he doesn't try to force a reaction. At first, this behavior can be confusing because many people are used to emotional reactions, but calm indifference introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty changes how people perceive value. Seneca once wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." In other words, reacting emotionally before you understand a situation often creates unnecessary suffering. The Stoic man avoids this trap. He observes before reacting. He keeps his composure before speaking. And most importantly, he refuses to let another person's behavior dictate his emotional state. This is why indifference can feel so unsettling. Because when a man refuses to react emotionally, he quietly communicates something powerful. He is not afraid of losing her. His peace does not depend on her behavior. And without saying it directly, his actions send a message many women rarely encounter. I don't need you. Not out of arrogance, but out of self-mastery. And the moment a woman truly believes that message, the entire emotional dynamic between you begins to change. Which leads to another trait that makes the Stoic man fundamentally different from most men. He does not build his life around women. Instead, he builds his life around something far more important: purpose. And that is where the next shift in perception begins. Part 3. The Stoic man's independence. After a woman realizes that she cannot easily control your emotions, another question begins to appear in her mind. Who is this man when he is not reacting to me? Because most men organize their lives around women without even noticing it. Their schedule changes for her, their mood depends on her attention, their sense of worth rises and falls based on how she responds. And slowly, their entire emotional world begins to orbit around one person. But the Stoic man lives differently. His life already has a center, and that center is not a woman. It is his purpose, his discipline, his work, his values, his mission. These things existed before she entered his life, and they will continue whether she stays or leaves. This is why his presence feels different. He is not performing to gain approval. He is not adjusting his identity to be liked. He simply lives according to his own standards. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this kind of independence when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, a man does not prove his worth through words or persuasion. He proves it through the way he lives, the consistency of his actions, the discipline of his character, and the stability of his mind. When a man lives this way, something unusual happens. A woman begins to realize that she is not the center of his world. At first, this can feel unsettling because many relationships are built on emotional dependency. But the Stoic man does not offer dependency. He offers something far more rare: choice. He chooses to spend time with her. He chooses to care about her. He chooses to love her. But none of those choices come from need. They come from freedom. And freedom changes the meaning of everything. Because when a man needs someone, his affection can feel like survival. But when a man does not need someone, his affection becomes something else entirely. It becomes intentional, voluntary, real. Without saying it loudly, his life communicates a quiet message: I don't need you. Not because he rejects connection, but because his identity was never built on someone else's presence. And strangely enough, this kind of independence often creates a deeper attraction than dependency ever could. Because the moment a woman realizes that a man is capable of walking away and still being whole, she begins to see his presence differently. It is no longer something she controls. It is something he chooses. And that leads to the deeper meaning behind those three powerful words. Because I don't need you is often misunderstood. Many people hear it as rejection, but in reality, its true meaning is something far more profound. Which brings us to the next idea. Part 4. The true meaning of I don't need you. At this point, many people misunderstand the phrase I don't need you. They imagine arrogance, coldness, detachment, a man who pushes others away to appear powerful. But that interpretation completely misses the point, because the Stoic idea behind these words is not about rejecting connection. It is about removing dependency. There is a profound difference between needing someone and choosing someone. When you need someone, your happiness becomes fragile. Your peace depends on their attention. Your emotional stability depends on their behavior, and the relationship slowly turns into something heavy, not love, but reliance. The Stoic philosophers warned against this kind of emotional dependency long ago. Epictetus once said, "If you wish to be free, do not desire anything that depends on others." This does not mean you should avoid relationships. It means your inner stability should never be controlled by another person. A Stoic man may deeply care for a woman. He may enjoy her presence. He may even build a life with her. But his sense of self does not collapse without her. His purpose remains. His discipline remains. His identity remains. And because of that, his love becomes something far more powerful. It becomes a choice. When a man says, "I want you, but I don't need you," he is not diminishing the relationship. He is elevating it. He is saying, "I am not here because I am afraid to be alone. I am here because I choose to be. And that distinction changes everything. Because love built on fear will always feel unstable, but love built on freedom feels entirely different. It feels calm, confident, unforced. And that is why the words, "I don't need you," can be so psychologically powerful. Not because they reject love, but because they remove the desperation that quietly destroys it. And this creates a paradox many people never expect. The less dependent a man becomes, the more meaningful his presence begins to feel, which leads to the final truth behind this idea. Because the man who can walk away at any moment is often the same man a woman fears losing the most. Part 5. The paradox of freedom and attraction. There is a paradox at the center of many relationships that few people ever talk about. The more a man depends on a woman emotionally, the less powerful his presence begins to feel. But the less he depends on her, the more meaningful his presence becomes. At first, this seems contradictory because many people believe love means needing someone, but the Stoic philosophers saw it differently. They believed that true strength in relationships comes from inner stability, not emotional dependency. Think about it from a simple psychological perspective. If someone stays with you because they need you, their presence is predictable. They cannot leave easily. They rely on you too much, and because of that, their attention slowly loses its value. But when someone stays with you, even though they could leave at any moment, their presence carries a completely different meaning. It becomes voluntary, intentional, chosen. And humans naturally value what is freely given far more than what is emotionally dependent. This is the paradox many women feel when they encounter a truly independent man. On one hand, his calm detachment can feel intimidating because she realizes she cannot easily control him through emotion. But on the other hand, that same independence becomes deeply attractive because it signals strength, self-control, and emotional freedom. The Stoic man does not threaten to leave. He does not play games. He does not try to manipulate. He simply lives in a way that makes one thing clear. His happiness does not depend on another person. And when a woman senses this, a new dynamic appears. She realizes something important. This man is capable of loving her deeply, but he is also capable of living peacefully without her. And that realization makes every moment with him feel more meaningful, because it is never based on desperation. It is based on choice. The Stoic man does not cling. He does not chase. He does not beg for attention. Instead, his life quietly communicates a simple truth: I don't need you. But at the same time, it also communicates something even more powerful: I choose you. And when love becomes a choice rather than a necessity, it transforms from dependency into something far stronger. It becomes respect. Stoic conclusion: love without dependency. In a world where many people confuse love with dependency, the Stoic path offers a different perspective. It teaches that true connection does not grow from emotional neediness. It grows from inner strength, from discipline, from self-mastery. A Stoic man does not build his identity around another person. He builds it within himself. And because of that, his relationships are never based on fear of loss. They are based on freedom. Freedom to stay, freedom to leave, freedom to choose. So the next time you think about the words, I don't need you, remember their deeper meaning. They are not words of rejection. They are words of independence. And paradoxically, that independence is often what creates the deepest respect and attraction. Because the most powerful man in any relationship is not the one who controls the other person. It is the one who has mastered himself. As Epictetus once said, No man is free who is not master of himself. Thank you for watching Stoic Wisdom today. If this message resonated with you, write "I choose, not need" in the comments. And if you want to explore more Stoic wisdom about relationships, discipline, and inner strength, subscribe to our channel. Until next time, stay calm, stay grounded, stay free.